Alright, folks, how are you doing today? This is Paul from Garage Movie Club, and I just watched the new Batman movie called The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, director of the two latter Planet of the Apes movies. He directed Cloverfield. Matt Reeves is a much beloved director on the interwebs. Here's my history with Batman. Growing up, I was always more of a Spider-Man guy. Spider-Man was my main, and I especially loved the Sam Raimi movies. My brother, on the other hand, he was all about the Batman movies, and we used to go back and forth. We'd bicker at each other like old hags. No, Batman's better, Spider-Man's better. Personally, going through all the Batman movies, you got Batman 66, which is a classic. Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. I love the campy Batman TV shows and movies. I love those a lot. I feel like people poo-poo on them, but they are what they are. Then you had the Tim Burton Batman movies, Batman 1989, and then Batman Returns. I especially love Batman Returns. Then you had the Schumacher ones, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, which I feel like those two, they get shat on a lot, but it's like they are what they are. People are like, oh, there's a Bat credit card in the movie. And I'm like, yeah, who gives a shit? Then you have Batman Begins. It was like a change of direction from the campiness of the Joel Schumacher ones to the gritty Nolan movies. I'm not too big into Batman Begins. I feel like it kind of tries to be serious, but then you have a guy going around the city trying to poison the city. I always thought it was a little goofy. The Dark Knight, masterpiece, obviously. Everyone loves The Dark Knight. And I love The Dark Knight Rises more than most people. I acknowledge its flaws, but it is what it is. Then you had Batman vs. Superman, which was a dumpster fire, and in my opinion, the worst Batman movie. So going into this, it was a much-deserved reboot. Batman is one of those things like James Bond, where if you get a different director every time, they'll like lend themselves to the franchise, and it's one of those franchises where it really benefits from having different iterations of it. And this is no exception. I think this is probably my personal favorite Batman movie, and I will acknowledge that on a technical level, screenplay-wise, cinematography-wise, acting-wise, I think The Dark Knight is the best Batman movie. But I feel like this is what I like in a Batman movie. It feels more gothic, it feels more gloomy, it feels a bit more emo. And I feel like that fits Batman. I feel like the director that always fit Batman the best was Tim Burton, because he has that very gothic style, and that's something that's very iconic to the character. And when Nolan brought his style to the Batman franchise, I love Christopher Nolan and I like his movies, but they didn't really feel like Batman. You look at Gotham City, it always kind of looked like Pittsburgh or Toronto or a very plain metropolitan city. And in this Batman movie, Gotham really feels like Gotham. The sky is very polluted, there's smog everywhere, the city is lit by neon lights, and Gotham, more so in this movie than in the previous Batman movies, kind of feels like a character in itself in this movie, and I kind of hate it when critics say that, oh, the setting was a character in the movie, but it kind of does apply in this case. Everything feels very corrupt, everyone feels very selfish in this movie, everything's run by the mob, the cops are crooked, even the criminals, even Catwoman's character, who does the good thing, but she ends up being kind of a vigilante at some points, which I did enjoy that conflict in that character. And obviously you just have some crazy psychopaths running around the street, like the Riddler. Overall, I'm just gonna say it off the bat, I love this movie. I think Robert Pattinson does a really good job. He's a very kind of emo person, Robert Pattinson. He's a very, like, you look at what he does in the Twilight movies, he's very brooding. And I feel like that really works with Batman. Batman's got some oily hair. He doesn't shower all that often. He's got the bags under his eyes. He's exhausted. And you can tell this Batman is also early in his career. This is probably not Batman year 1, but Batman year 2.5. His suit is tactical. He's got leather boots, but it's in no way as enhanced as the Dark Knight movies. And I like that. He's like a little rougher in this movie. The Batmobile kind of just looks like a souped-up Mustang. The one performance that really stands out as fantastic to me in this movie was Colin Farrell as the Penguin, who's barely recognizable in this. And he kind of offers some comic relief-ish. This is a very gloomy movie. It's not like a Marvel movie where they're cutting jokes left and right. Yeah, but he gives the best performance. I feel bad for whoever plays the Riddler. His name is Paul Dano. Every movie, that poor guy gets cast as a creep. In There Will Be Blood, he was like this creepy pastor that had like a god complex. And in Prisoners, he plays like a child kidnapper. And now they cast him as the Riddler, and he has a very good punchable face. You see his face and you just want to punch it. And Riddler in previous iterations, in cartoons, he was always a very narcissistic character, but I feel like whoever performed the Riddler would try to make that narcissism and turn it into like a very flashy performance, make it very cartoony, and it never really translated well. The Riddler in this movie is very narcissistic, but it's a very realistic sort of narcissisticness. It's almost like he's a psychopath, basically. And that's where he gets his kicks. He starts like an internet following of like internet incels, and that was very interesting. My friend pointed out when the movie was finished that the Riddler has more subscribers on his Twitch channel than I have on my YouTube channel. Guys, we need to change that. Come on, man. A fucking psychopath has more subscribers than me? Fuck you guys. I went to see this with my friend. I'm gonna pass him the mic. Come to the microphone. I can cut this out if you don't want it to be on the internet, but I just want to hear your perspective. Are you a Batman fan, first of all?
Yeah, I've been a Batman fan since I was young. I watched the original cartoon series. Between that and the old film with Poison Ivy in it, I think that was
that's Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I like that movie. I also watched The Dark Knight. I thought that was one of the best Batman movies I've seen, and I would say that this one comes as a close second, in my opinion, to The Dark Knight.
You had some complaints about the runtime. Did you feel like this movie ran too long?
Like, I felt like it was a little slow. Like, it had a lot of action-packed scenes, but in between those, there was long cuts of just long stretches of really slow. And Batman is known not to have much dialogue anyways, so it felt like the movie was, yeah, definitely a little long.
Yeah, and I feel like I get what you mean with the lack of action. Here's the way I see it. The Dark Knight movies, especially The Dark Knight, more so than the other two in the trilogy, was a very action-focused movie, and there's so many iconic action bits. We think of like that truck flipping over, that's very iconic. And what I always wanted to see in a Batman movie is Batman be a bit more of a detective. I feel like we never really got that in a Batman movie, so that itch ended up getting scratched, so it ended up being me being more apologetic for its lack of action. It really feels like a Batman movie, but it feels like a film noir. From the way it's shot, it opens, Batman's narrating the film, it really felt like a film noir. How all the characters are just a little corrupt, a little shady, and that's what I liked about it. Yeah.
Definitely had its Dick Tracy moments in there.
Yeah, it felt like Dick Tracy sometimes, especially the Penguin. He was kind of emulating Al Pacino and Dick Tracy.
And I agree what you mean about the city of Gotham and how they, displayed that. I think honestly, so the last kind of Batman movie I watched was the Joker movie, and I wasn't a big fan of the Joker movie, but one thing that I admit is the cinematography was excellent, and they did a lot of the similar, gave you the similar vibes of the inner city, so I like that component of it. I thought there was an abrupt change in the depiction of the city, like near the end of the movie. In the beginning of the movie, you only see the dark, gloomy, the nightlife, almost as if there's a portion of the city that's like the underground. But then it kind of flips to a more like modern day, regular city, town hall, political kind of scenes, and everything's light, so
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that kind of took away from, the Gotham vibes at one point.
Yeah, I can see what you mean there. One more thing I'll throw out there. The last superhero movie I watched was Spider-Man No Way Home. And I feel like all the emotion came from nostalgia. Tobey Maguire showed up. Everyone clapped. There was a part in here, like, I don't know if you heard it, but when Batman kissed Catwoman for the first time, there was a few claps in the theater, and to me, as like someone who likes film, it kind of felt good that this movie kind of stands on its own and merited an applause from a narrative moment rather than just pure nostalgia bait. And I know Spider-Man No Way Home has its fans. I'm not really one of them, unfortunately. I think when you compare this Batman movie to that Spider-Man movie, it's not even a comparison to me. And especially, Batman is not a character where you associate him with saving random citizens as much as Spider-Man. That's more of a Spider-Man thing. He's delivering pizzas and saving kids from an oncoming school bus or something. But in this movie, there are some moments where Batman is really acting out of selflessness. There's a part in here where people are about to get electrocuted, and he saves them from that. Then he swims over to people to save them. I felt like this was the first superhero movie in quite a while that showed Batman or the superhero saving random citizens, which was refreshing. That brings to your problem, that kind of change in tone towards the end, how it went from that gritty Gotham-y look to that bright, like, cheerful look, which I can kind of get, and it kind of did look a little off. Maybe it was something with the CG or the choice of colors that came with it, but yeah.
And I will say that, so I watched the last Spider-Man movie as well, and there are like some major differences between the two superheroes in terms of, you know, how they portray themselves and whatnot. So typically, if my understanding is right, like Batman doesn't really have like a love character. He doesn't fall in love with anyone, but Spider-Man is always with Mary Jane, right? That's his whole character. And Batman is more of like a solitary individual, you know, grim. But of course, Batman uses all of his gadgets. He doesn't necessarily have a superpower like Spider-Man. I will say that I was a little disappointed in some of the lack of, you know, gadgets that he usually runs with. The Batmobile, in my opinion, it didn't look as good as it did in, like, you know, like for example, the Dark Knight. It looked like something that came out of like Mad Max. It was like very like, you know, metal bars and kind of like some sort of you know, like,
yeah, that's actually something I liked about the movie, because it showed that Batman was pretty new to this. Like, the Batmobile was basically just a very souped up car, and he doesn't have many gadgets on him. The one part I did think was pretty jarring is when Batman fucking shooted up roids and drugs at some point.
Yeah.
He just stabbed himself with drugs and went fucking ballistic. He went on some acid trip. It felt weird to see how far we've come. We used to have the Adam West Batmans where he'd be like, "Don't do drugs, kids," to Batman just casually shooting some random drug in his thigh. We've come a long way, folks.
Yeah, especially since they made a point of talking about the drop heads in the film and how they're wasting their lives on drugs. But, you know, that must have come out of, like, I guess a video game, probably. I imagine, like, that's where they got the idea from. It's probably one of the video games.
Yeah, this felt very reminiscent. I've played Batman Arkham City, and this felt very accurate to Batman Arkham City. Even the design of Penguin, he looked very similar to his iteration in Batman Arkham City. Haven't played the two other Batman games. We pointed out that that Riddler gentleman, he got a gimp mask. Did he get that mask from a sex shop? Did he get it from Wish.com and just searched sex mask? But then John noticed that there was a part where it was written that it was what was the mask?
So it was a winter military combat mask that you could buy at the military supply store.
It kind of reminded me of Kick-Ass too, how he steals his mom's costume and it was like some sex costume. But it was really frightening though. It was a pretty scary costume.
Yeah, I thought that the Riddler was definitely, you know, intense and scary looking, but it's just jarring how the minute you realize what he actually looks like who he is underneath that mask, you're like, wait a second, this guy is definitely not scary, and like
Yeah.
they really make you believe, one thing versus what's under the mask.
There's a dialogue scene that goes on too where he said he was inspired by Batman because all it takes is to you gotta inspire fear into people and you can get them to do a lot of things. So I think that's where he was coming from. He put like a mask on that's all like leather and made himself look scary to invoke fear in people because it's easy to control people if they're fearful, which was pretty cool to have in a superhero movie, that kind of conversation. It's always cool in superhero movies, especially Batman movies, when there's an interrogation scene going on where you get to see like the philosophy of the villains, which is why I think Batman kind of holds up even to today. The villain gallery is very interesting. Like you can go from the Riddler in the Adam West movies, which was like some guy dancing around, and then there's the Riddler who was played by Jim Carrey, which was kind of the same shtick. It was Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey. Then you have this Riddler, and it makes me wonder, like, they tease in the movie. We had this debate. Guys, we're not comic book nerds, okay? John thinks that the guy at the end of the movie was Two-Face. I think it was Joker. Why do you think it was Two-Face?
Well, I think it was confusing at first because this villain, he mentioned Joker in his line that he gave. But the thing is that he had a raw, off, like, mouth face, kind of like Two-Face does. So I wasn't, led to believe that was Joker.
Yeah, I thought it was Joker because in later comic books, he's basically like Leatherface. He'll put like a mask over his face and he's just like chewed up underneath. So I think they're gonna go down that route. To be honest, like, I don't want there to be another Joker because we kind of had so many Jokers we had Heath Ledger, Jared Leto, and Joaquin Phoenix in a short amount of time. And I'm kind of getting overdosed on Joker. I'd much prefer to see someone like a Mr. Freeze show up, or even like something weird like Man-Bat. I don't know, just like anything other than Joker. I'm a little sick of Joker.
I don't think it was Joker, and it also, look at his hair in the film. Joker's hair is usually like, matted down, long hair, and Two-Face's hair is blue and like, wild a bit, right?
Yeah, depending on which Two-Face, obviously. Yeah. Because the Two-Face was in the Dark Knight as well. He kind of just looked like a normal dude. But
well, I hope it's Two-Face because we've seen a lot of Joker.
Yeah, we're all kind of sick on Joker. I think Matt Reeves would do a good Joker. They're announcing that they're making a TV show based on this, and it's gonna follow mostly Penguin, and it's gonna be like a mafia show basically, which does sound interesting to me. We didn't talk about John Turturro, which is one of my favorite actors. He was the guy from Do the Right Thing, the racist Italian guy in Do the Right Thing. You know how he what's his name? He had a son, and the son was super racist.
I didn't see that. Oh,
Do the Right Thing.
The Spike Lee movie. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was him. I recommended he watch Do the Right Thing, and but he did a good job in this movie as well. Anyway, The Batman, highly recommended. I'll see you folks around. Subscribe to Garage Movie Club.